That black janitor was only invited to the party to be humiliated on camera, not to be honored, not to be recognized, just to be laughed at in front of New York's entire white elite. She had scrubbed their floors for 2 years. They called her the cleaning girl. No one knew her name. No one knew. She was the disowned daughter of the very founder of this empire. And that night, she didn't just walk in. She brought the truth, the evidence, and an earthquake. In less than 2 hours, the millionaire was in handcuffs. The betraying attorney was exposed, and the entire media empire collapsed before the eyes of those who once mocked her. Her name is Kira Dunn, a black woman, a laborer, invisible. But they forgot, women like her aren't weak. They are watching, remembering, waiting for the day they rise. If you've ever been looked down on because of your job, your skin, your past, don't blink. Because this is a story you need to hear. And you'll never forget it. New York, Saturday night, the top floor of the Wexford Tower, headquarters of the largest media empire in America, shimmered under crystal lights and overpriced champagne. Tycoons, journalists, politicians, familiar faces from Forbes covers, all gathered for a lavish gala being live-streamed nationwide. At the center of the ballroom, Ethan Wexford, CEO of the conglomerate, proudly held up a golden envelope before the cameras. His smile carried no warmth, just a cold, calculated slap. I sent an invitation to the janitor, Kira Dunn. Let's see if she dares to show up. Adds a little spice to the evening. The room erupted in laughter. Some clapped. Some called it satirical genius. That black woman, the one who scrubbed toilets on the 9th floor, the one they mockingly called the attic ghost, had now become a public punchline. No one, absolutely no one, thought Kira would dare walk through that door. A fake invitation, a trap dressed in wine and flashbulbs. But what Ethan didn't know was that Kira had held on to that card for 20 years. And she wouldn't walk into that party with fear. She'd walk in with the preparation of a woman who had everything stolen from her and came back to reclaim it all. For 2 whole years, Kira Dunn was the heir inside Wexford Tower, present but never noticed. She arrived before dawn, when the floors still held the footprints of last night's CEOs. She left before sunrise, carrying away the dirt, the smirks, and all the words they thought she couldn't hear. Girl, wipe this down, will you? Why do they keep popping up like this? Feels like we're living in a damn documentary. I swear, her shadow always makes me feel dirty. No one said her name. No one asked if she'd eaten. She was the ghost of the service floor, the breathing thing that cleaned wine glasses and lipstick stains. But what they didn't know was Kira heard it all, remembered it all. Every name, every face, every fake smile, logged and stored. Because Kira wasn't just a cleaner. She was someone who lived in silence, but thought with the clarity of a woman who had lost everything and was planning piece by piece to reclaim justice. In her tiny locker in the basement, next to the uniform stained with bleach, Kira had written one line in permanent marker. They don't see me because they never thought I could see them. And they were half right. Kira didn't just see them. She stared straight into the heart of a hollow empire, and she was getting ready to rip it open. 9 p.m. The grand hall of Wexford Tower sparkled like a stage. Crystal chandeliers, flowing gowns, sharp tuxedos, and hollow laughter echoing off the vaulted ceilings. And then the doors opened. Kira Dunn stepped in. A high-neck black silk dress, sleek 90s vintage, hugged her slender but defiant frame. Not revealing, not designer, but commanding. She wore no jewelry, only an old wristwatch, the last thing she had left from her mother. Instantly, murmurs swept the room. Cameras clicked furiously. Someone whispered, God, she actually came. Another snickered. Did anyone check if she stole that dress? From the balcony above, Ethan Wexford squinted, swirling wine in his glass and scoffing. This should be filed under the absurd chronicles. But what no one expected, Kira didn't flinch. She walked like that marble floor was where she'd been raised. Each step, deliberate. Each glance, cold as steel, and every mocking grin aimed at her only steadied her stride. Very soon, those smiles would freeze. Because what they didn't know, tonight isn't a charity gala. It's a courtroom, and no one here is walking out innocent. She had barely stepped into the center of the hall when the attacks rained down like acid, poured into champagne flutes by the mouths of the elite. Fiona Wexford, Ethan's wife, approached, her hand grazing Kira's shoulder as if touching something dirty. Her smile was a razor blade. You do realize spraying perfume on filth is still a waste, right? The women behind her burst into laughter. A CFO, his collar embroidered with Harvard, sneered, "That vintage dress looks like it came from Salvation Army." Didn't know people still wore funeral clothes to parties. The laughter wasn't just mockery anymore. It was an execution. No blades, no blood, but enough to make the faint-hearted run out in shame. Kira didn't move, didn't lower her head, didn't fire back. She just smiled softly, like she'd heard it all 100 times before, and it no longer held power. This dress used to belong to my mother, back when she was still Kira Lancaster, the rightful heir to the Wexford name, the one your family tried to bury alive. Silence fell like a velvet curtain. Glasses froze midair. Eyes darted in panic, masked behind high fashion. Ethan stood frozen, his hand clenched into a fist. What Kira had just said wasn't a jab. It was the opening shot of a takeover. Ethan let out a laugh, but it was dry, stripped of the confidence he started with. "You're lying. Your mother could have been anyone, but Nathaniel Wexford never had a bastard like you." The words landed like a public execution. The crowd gave slight, instinctive nods, as if watching a doomed act cut short mid-performance. But Kira didn't flinch. She gently pulled a chain from beneath her collar, an old silver pendant engraved with 3 worn letters, NWL, Nathaniel Wexford Lancaster. This pendant belonged to him. He engraved it himself for my mother, Amelia Lancaster, in 1990. And I, Kira Lancaster Dunn, am the result of that love. The room trembled. No more laughter. No applause. Just the faint clink of a glass against a table, and Ethan's eyes shattering like glass. He promised to protect us. Bought my mother an apartment in Brooklyn, sent support every month, until he suddenly died. After that, everything vanished. The apartment was seized. My mother got sick, and I had to drop out of college. I cleaned floors in a building that should have been mine, just to survive. She lifted her chin and met Ethan's eyes head on. "You don't have to believe me, but an inheritance doesn't wait for the approval of the man who denied it." And that was just the overture. The truth Kira had brought tonight carried far more weight than a last name. Ethan tried to stay composed, but his hands had begun to tremble. Guests looked at one another, torn between doubt and disbelief, as if a glamorous play had suddenly turned into a crime thriller. And then the back doors opened. Kira turned calmly, her voice sharp and firm. "I didn't come here alone." 3 figures entered. Carmen Rosales, a Dominican investigative journalist, famous for taking down a corrupt congressman. Louis Brenner, an estate attorney, who had represented federal inheritance cases of national scale. And finally, Dr. Marcus Phelps, Nathaniel Wexford's former private physician, who had vanished from the medical world 2 decades ago. The air thickened, unbreathable. Dr. Phelps stepped forward, locking eyes with Ethan. His voice was hoarse, yet rang out like a bell in a temple. Nathaniel Wexford didn't die of a stroke, as the report claimed. He was poisoned slowly with anticoagulants over the last 6 months of his life. The ballroom froze like lightning had struck. A woman dropped her wine glass. Phones were pulled out. Live streams went live. The hashtag #Wexford scandal began trending instantly on Twitter. Ethan took a step back. Fiona grabbed his hand, shaking. "Marcus, what the hell are you saying?" Dr. Phelps didn't blink. "I'm saying her father was murdered. And the person who did it is standing in this very room. What was once a lavish gala had just become a public indictment. And the audience now was all of America. Ethan's face turned red as he roared over the chaos. Everything she said is fabricated. If my father was murdered, where's the evidence? Kira opened her purse. She pulled out a silver USB drive, holding it up before hundreds of eyes. The evidence is right here. The original audio recording of a conversation between Ethan and Dr. Phelps, where he threatened the doctor into falsifying the death report. She walked to the event host's laptop and plugged in the USB. The screen lit up, but there were no files. Empty. A warning popped up. Drive formatted, 7 hours ago. The air turned to ice. Carmen Rosales gasped. Kira, you don't have a backup? Kira stood frozen, her eyes wide, stunned. She had stored that USB in the private safe at the office of Louis Brenner, the one man she trusted. She turned. Louis was quietly stepping back toward Ethan, his expression cold as steel. Then he smiled. Sorry, Kira. I only agreed to represent you, so I'd know exactly what needed to be destroyed. The ballroom exploded. A betrayal no one saw coming. Kira stood still. For a moment, it looked like she had lost. Ethan turned to the crowd, hand raised in victory. You see, her little performance is over. Evidence gone. She's just a janitor who thought she was a princess. And the room erupted in cruel laughter, phones in the air, hashtags spiking. But what none of them knew was that Kira still had one card left to play. Amid the flashing cameras and live streams exploding across social media, Louis Brenner stepped up to the podium, wearing a cold, calculated smile. I'm sorry, but I have to speak up. Ms. Kira Dunn hired me with the intent to forge a will. She asked me to make it look legal. The entire room held its breath. Then chaos erupted like thunder. Someone shouted, "These bottom feeders always try to claw their way up. A janitor trying to grab a piece of $1 billion pie? This whole thing is just a pity show." Kira stood frozen. She didn't cry, but confusion clouded her eyes. The man she had trusted most was the one who just shattered her last chance. Security was ordered to restore order, but instead of calming the crowd, they dragged Kira off the stage as if she were a threat to the company's reputation. The live stream cameras kept rolling. Comments flooded in. Fraud. Washed-up maid playing the victim. Damn, I've seen her mop the 9th floor. Fiona, arms crossed from a distance, smirked and whispered to Ethan, "It's over. She just buried herself." But in the pit of public humiliation, Kira whispered one line, soft but razor sharp. "They think I came here with a USB, but I came here with a plan." The public game was over. And the real reversal was about to begin. She was dragged off the stage like a stray trespasser. In the kingdom of the elite, her dress tore slightly at the side. Her dignity ripped wide open. But Kira didn't break. She stood silently in a dark corner of the ballroom, beyond the reach of cameras, and pressed the side of the old watch her mother left behind. It wasn't just a watch. Inside was a recording chip, her mother's final gift, from a woman who had been betrayed and discarded by the Wexford Empire. Then came the voice. Clear, cold, metallic like a blade. "If you even mention that bastard child again, I swear, I'll wipe you off the map. I'll tell people you fell down the stairs or had a heart attack. I have ways, trust me, Marcus." It was Ethan, talking to Dr. Phelps. And this wasn't a backup. This wasn't the USB they wiped. This was the original, and it had never left Kira's hand. She listened to it 3 times. No tears. No tremble. Just steady breathing. Because now she knew one thing for certain. Ethan hadn't just lied. He murdered her father and would destroy anything to bury the truth. To beat a liar, you don't just fight him. You let him hang himself in front of the entire world. Tonight no longer belonged to Wexford. It belonged to the woman who once mopped their floors and was now rewriting their rules. Just when the gala seemed ready to fade into silence, A single ping echoed through the sound system. Then the massive LED screen in the ballroom burst to life. Carmen Rosales's voice cut through the room, sharp as a scalpel. Apologies, ladies and gentlemen. I wasn't invited here to report the news. I was invited to expose the truth. And truth doesn't wait for permission to speak. On the screen appeared a bank statement, a $400,000 wire transfer from Ethan Wexford to Louis Brenner, with a chilling note. Retainer, confidentiality. Then came a string of internal emails between Ethan and his accounting team. Reclassify the $18 million as PR expenses, must vanish within 3 days. If the SEC asks, blame market volatility. The ballroom exploded. Phones went up instantly. Live streams flipped from mockery to hashtag Wexford leaks, a trending topic in under 6 minutes. But Carmen wasn't done. She hit play on another audio clip. This time, Ethan's voice, tight with fury, speaking to the head accountant. I don't care how you make the numbers dance, but if anyone finds out I pulled $18 million from the dividend fund, I'll pin it all on you. Got it? Fiona turned pale. Someone whispered, Jesus, he's even dirtier than we thought. And then sirens. Police were called. Not by Kira, but by a senior shareholder seated quietly in the crowd who'd finally had enough. Police sirens echoed from Madison Avenue. The revolving glass doors slid open. 2 officers entered, solemn without a word of warning. Ethan Wexford, the Forbes cover CEO, the man who once steered national media with a nod, was turned around and handcuffed before a sea of recording phones. Mr. Ethan Wexford, you are under arrest for embezzlement, bribery, destruction of evidence, and connection to a suspicious death from 20 years ago. Fiona screamed as camera flashes lit up the room. You destroyed this family over ego and vengeance. You've condemned our children to live in the shadow of your crimes. Ethan had nothing left to say. His face drained of color. The trademark arrogant tilt of his head now hung low, like a coward in disgrace. Kira stepped forward, standing in the center of the ballroom. The live broadcast was still streaming to millions. She didn't cry. She wasn't angry. She spoke calmly, clearly. I didn't do this for revenge. I don't need Ethan to hurt the way I once did. All I wanted was justice. And now I have it. Not just for me, but for the father who was killed, for the mother buried in silence, and for everyone who's ever been silenced, not because they lacked truth, but because they lacked power. Silence fell over the room. No one said a word. Because everyone knew. Tonight, it wasn't just a man who was taken away. It was an empire of arrogance that finally collapsed. 6 months later. On the top floor of Wexford Media, what was once Ethan's private office was now Kira Dunn's command center. Gone were the walnut-paneled walls, the powerful CEO oil portraits, and the crystal vases holding overpriced orchids. In their place, a team member of the month board, and photos of the maintenance crew, security staff, janitorial team, the first time their names had ever appeared in the company bulletin. And a large sign hanging behind her desk. Transparency is power. Respect is the foundation. In 6 months, the company had grown 60% because Kira did the one thing Ethan never understood. She treated people like people. Base salaries rose by 32%. Promotions became merit-based. Anti-harassment policies weren't just printed, they were enforced. Wexford was no longer an empire of control, but a blueprint for corporate rebirth. One late afternoon, Fiona Wexford came to see Kira. No makeup, no entourage. Just a mother, eyes sunken, hand on her chest. I didn't protect my children from their father's cruelty. But you did, even though no one gave you the chance. Kira smiled softly. Her voice was warm yet firm. Children should never pay for the sins of adults. But adults must pay for their own. One early autumn afternoon, during an exclusive interview with The New Yorker, Kira sat by the window on the 40th floor, gazing out at the city that once rejected her. A young reporter asked, without hesitation, "Do you think you went too far? Turning a gala into a courtroom?" bringing down an entire family dynasty? Kira met the girl's eyes. Not with anger, not with pride, but as a woman who had walked through hell and refused to become the devil. If I wanted revenge, I would have made them suffer the way they made me suffer. But I chose to build, so people like me would never have to bow again. Justice isn't a scream. It's a steady truth, one strong enough that the guilty can't hide anymore. When the interview ended, Kira didn't return to her new penthouse. She drove to a small house in Queens, where two children she had recently adopted waited for her. A little girl abandoned at the border, and a boy who'd spent years in the foster care system. She sat on the floor with them, helping with third-grade math homework, as golden sunlight spilled across the table. And in that quiet moment, she whispered silently in her heart, "Dad, you'd be proud." Not because I reclaimed an inheritance, but because I turned pain into light. And that light now guides children who never had the chance to dream. Kira's story ends here. Not on a podium, not in a headline, but in the hearts of those who believe justice, when prepared with purpose, will always prevail.